I'm Vanessa Levin, and you're listening to Elevating Early Childhood. Has anyone ever said to you, "Oh, you teach preschool. It must be so much fun to play all day"? Now, after you're done biting your tongue, don't you just wish that you could show them how much work goes into teaching preschool? And I'm not just talking about the physical exhaustion that comes from teaching young children. I'm talking about the complex stuff that most people take for granted, like teaching young children how to identify letters of the alphabet. I mean, you can't just point to the letter A, say the letter name, and then call it a day, right? There's so much more to it than that. While it may sound easy to some people, there is a real science to teaching letter names and sounds that not just anybody can do. It's a talent and a skill that many of us, myself included, have devoted our entire careers to. And speaking of talent and skill, joining us today is my good friend and literacy guru. Now, this person travels and trains teachers all across the U.S. in literacy best practices. She runs her own consulting company. She's served as a classroom teacher, a K-12 reading specialist, a state-level literacy specialist, and a professional development learning designer for DC Public Schools. And I met her while we were on the same educational conference speaking circuit. I'll never forget the first time we worked together. I was presenting in a conference room at a hotel, and she was in the next conference room. After all our sessions had started, I heard a xylophone playing through the walls, followed by lots of noise and laughter. And that's what learning with her is like: music, noise, and laughter, and a whole lot of learning. It's none other than Melissa Leach of Leach Literacy Training. She provides teachers throughout the U.S. with the tools they need to create joyful classrooms full of readers and writers. So, Melissa, let's get right to it. Let's talk about letter names and letters of the alphabet. So, the young children need to learn to identify the letters of the alphabet before they can learn about letter sounds. What do you think?
Oh man, the work of an early childhood teacher, right? Like we think it's all about the letters and the letter sounds. And if you teach pre-K, you've got kindergarten teachers, that's what they just, send them knowing all their letters and letter sounds. And so what we really need to think about is it's not that easy. Understanding letters, sounds, it's all mumbo jumbo when these kids first start working with us. And so I wish there was some, magic song we could sing or magic activity that we could do or something that could be said, that this is how all children are going to learn these things. And this is how all these children are going to learn them at the same rate and in the same time. And it's just, there's nothing like that. And so as far as, answering this question, the first thing that comes to mind is really understanding just how big of a scope learning the letters of our alphabetical system is, right? Because there's many, different symbols that represent letters in different languages, right? And so one of the first things that our children, I think, have to do before they even know an A from a P, from a Q, from a Z, is understanding the concept of a symbol and a symbol representing, something else. And so we kind of, we just kind of start there. Like, these are letters. You don't have to know what the name of any of these letters are, but these are what we call letters. And you're going to see lots of them, and you have some of them in your name, but look, he has some of them in his name. And oh my goodness, here they are in books. So just kind of starting with that conversation. Don't worry about what the letter is, but just these are letters.
Right.
And, let's start there, right?
Right.
The other thing did with young children when I worked with them is we had to play games. We had to make everything, I think, needs to be playful with young children, right? Even this, not very academic concept of letters and letter names, it's got to start as playful. And so we started by just talking about the letters, again, not this is an A, this is a P, but talking about letters and starting to discern the differences in them, right? So all of these letters we gave, all of our letters are made up of parts, and you can call those parts whatever you want. So you could call them sticks or slants or dots or humps or tails, or again, there's no fancy, you have to call it what you call it, right? But just saying that letters are made up of these parts, and then having kids start to just say that letter has a stick in it, and that letter has a slant in it. Again, just this concept, the vocabulary that we're working on is the vocabulary of letter. These are letters, and then just being able to kind of, playfully discern. So if that means that kids start sorting letters, all of these letters have slants and all of these letters don't, or all of these letters have humps and all of these letters don't. That's the start, right?
I really liked what you were saying about this is a letter, right? Because I am thinking about, somebody was trying to show me a new type of calendar the other day, like the kind you would use in a day planner or something, right? So this person starts to show me this calendar. It had a special name. Don't remember the name. I had never seen anything like this before. I was not familiar with the name. I didn't know how it worked. And so they just jumped in and started explaining it. And I didn't even know what I was looking at. And so I had to stop them like a minute into their thing. And I was just like, no, can we just back up a bit and tell me what I'm looking at here? What is this? I didn't even know. Like, it was just like they started talking to me in another language. And so I feel like that could be what we're doing when we say, here's a letter, and kids are like, what's a letter?
Right. And we're not just saying, here's a letter. We're saying, here's a letter. It's an A. It
Right.
says A,
Right.
and apple, and astronaut, and
Right.
and then we're handing them this piece of paper.
Right.
I just, whoa. Right. Like just whoa.
Yeah.
So I think just the very basic of, these are what we call letters. There are lots of them. Let's look for them. Let's walk around the room and look for them. That's a letter. Right.
Yeah.
Like, these kids still don't know the difference between a numeral and a letter.
Yeah.
And a shape, a heart and a letter.
Right. And that's why it always concerns me when, we jump in too quickly in the beginning of the year and we kind of make assumptions, you've taught kindergarten before, maybe making assumptions about children and their independence in the bathroom the first few weeks of school.
Yes.
Yeah, we always kind of overestimate that they know more than we think they do. And then we have to take it back a few steps and go, okay, wait a minute. Maybe we don't know everything we need to know about that. So I think that the same holds true for letters. And another thing you were talking about that really struck home with me was about the way the different letters look with the slants and the slopes and the curves and all that stuff. And one of the ways, so I was just thinking in my head, like we do as teachers, oh yeah, like I do that by saying, like doing sorts with letters. Like, is it a letter? Is it not a letter? Like, here's a heart, here's a shape that's a letter. Which one's a letter? Let's look. And kids, quite often look at me with the deer in the headlights because they're like, I have no idea if that's a letter or not. And then you have to take it back even further. And I think it's very eye-opening when we go into it and approach it in that way. What do you think?
Absolutely. Sometimes we want to get to the end. We know what our end goal is, right? Like, we know our end goal is to send, these children knowing letters and knowing letter sounds into kindergarten or what have you. We know our end. And sometimes we don't give ourselves the grace to start at the very basic level.
Right.
What is a letter? Is it a letter? Is it not a letter? And that's big learning for kids. That is big learning for, a 3-year-old. And in some cases, a 4-year-old to sit there and just be like, well, I don't know. Right. They also don't know what shapes are. They also don't know what numbers are. So we're giving them kind of all of this language and helping them to, again, our goal is playfully right? Playfully discern, this work. And it's not about matching. Can you go match an uppercase? Don't even start with uppercase, lowercase. Not, right? Like there's a gradual, way to get to this end. And it is sometimes really the basic level in the beginning.
Right. And that is so true. And that's why it's really concerning to me when we say we're going to teach, all 26 letters in the first 26 days of school. Whoa, wait a minute. Let's just go back to what you and I were just talking about, right? Like, what if they don't even know what a letter is? And we're trying to cram 26 of them down their throats the first 26 days of school. We really have to know the children in front of us. And now maybe if your 3-year-olds come to you and they know, all this stuff already, like I'm sure you have a
3-year-old. Okay.
Sure
I have a
reading, right?
Vanessa, I have a brilliant 3-year-old. Okay. He's perfect in every way. I'm laughing. But I mean, I do. He is a very verbal 3-year-old. He has an older brother. He has, more oral language than most 3-year-old children. He's cunning as all get out. But he doesn't know. The other day he asked me, he said, "Can I write my name? Will you help me write my name?" He has never asked me to do that before. I'm thinking this is because he just started, a new preschool, but he doesn't know the difference between letters and shapes and whatnot. So anyway, we do this work, and I try very hard to separate, me, Melissa Leach, literacy person from Melissa Leach mom. So I try not to be a mom, at home, and also to not let his teacher know that I know anything either. I just kind of go, with the flow, but I'm hopeful to see, this letter play be what's going on in the classroom.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just really good to never make too many assumptions about the kids that are in our rooms. And I think that when we really take a close look at what they really do know, it can be so helpful because you'll end up having more success if you take the time to do, these kinds of noticings with your kids, noticing sorting, noticing the shapes of letters rather, and sorting the letters versus numbers versus everything, all of that great stuff.
Yeah. So can I jump in and kind of build off of that, knowing where you said kind of like knowing your students. And so I think, again, we know where we want to get to, and we're going to start with this identifying letters, tuning into their shapes. And then the other thing that works to our advantage is how egocentrical young children are, right? So I think Jack is just starting to notice and understand, there are these things called letters. And he asked me, what was the first thing he asked me to do with letters? Write his name. He didn't ask me to write apple because he didn't ask me to write apple because he's learned letter A. He asked me to write his name. And so when we are going to start this work with letters, it's not, like you said, the first 26 letters, in alphabetical order all the way through and just going and teaching them all. You can do that, and many teachers do, but I don't know that we're going to see the return on our efforts. I don't think you're going to see the return on the efforts. Now, one of the first letters that Jack probably is going to be tuning into is his J. His J is probably the most important letter. Maybe then it might be the W for his brother Wyatt. Maybe then it's okay, and that's Wyatt's W and my J. And then what it goes into is Jack starting to make friends in his class. He comes home talking about some of the other kids, in his class. And so then my next, letters that are going to have meaning and importance for Jack are going to be the letters that his friends' names start with. And he's going to start pointing those letters out. He might not know that Mathis's name starts with M, but he's going to say, "Oh, that's right." He's going to see the M and he's going to relate that to someone in his class, not the letter name. So we really need to think about, those personal letters. And so for me, Jack has 4. Those are the letters that he is going to start noticing and caring about, and that I care that he knows first and foremost, because that's going to allow him to write his name. And then he's going to, so when we are thinking about, okay, we've done this, what's a letter? We've done all that, right? Let's play with letters and understand that letters exist. And then if we do want to go to, what is that letter and what's its name? I think our best place to do that is to capitalize on the names that, that we were blessed with in our classroom this year. We help teachers make a name chart. So yes, you have names on cubbies and you have names on their tables, and there are names like in 1,000 places in your classroom. But we also think that names need to be in one sort of concise place, so that as you're talking about letters, and we'll get to the idea of sounds too, but as you're doing that, you can touch that child's name and point to that child's letter, that kids are just innately starting to notice. And I mean, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the shouting, and the hands raising and the bodies moving when a child is like, that's like in Simon's name, like, wow, right? And I don't get that response from an S worksheet. I'll tell you that.
Right.
I'll tell you that. So It's all about just capitalizing on kids' names, their letters. And it's not that Jack's only going to learn 4. I would have blessed him with, a much longer name if I thought that was, it's not that he's only going to learn these 4 letters, but those are his first that he starts caring about. And then his friends are who he starts caring about after that. It's so exciting.
Yeah. I was telling you before, for our listeners, I was telling Melissa before we got on the call here that I just spent some time with my nephew who's almost 5, and he's a little bit of a reluctant learner. He knows all his letters, but he doesn't like to be asked what they are or whatever. And so, but he is very enamored with his older cousins who are just slightly older than he is, but older children, and they're related to you. He's very fascinated. So I was trying to get him to tell me, I was kind of doing it like an informal assessment on him, to be honest. Don't tell him.
No, you don't do that.
But
we're so bad.
I wanted him to name like the letter T and so forth. So he has an older cousin named Patrick. And so I showed him the letter P, and he didn't want to answer me. He kept playing with his cars. And so I said, well, this letter's in Patrick's name. Oh, that's a T, and so it was like he needed to be motivated. He's very motivated to learn the letters in his older cousin's name, Patrick, than he is, just to be asked what the letter P is. Now, if it's in his name, he's all about telling you he knew all the letters in his name. But, when I phrased it in the form of these letters are in your older cousin's names, he was all over it. And I was able to finish that informal assessment. And it's very telling. Like, the names are just so important to little children.